You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zac Blackerby. Thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. Today's show a little bit different, which if you've listened to me for a while, whenever I say a show is a little bit different, it typically means we've got a guest that we don't typically have on, which, of course, Ted Pardee is our guest today. And he is part of the Houston Cougars radio broadcast. He's been doing color for them for, I think he said, over 15 years. So former player for him. And his name is Ted Pardee. So his @ on Twitter is @PartyTime, which is hilarious. So we'll get into that conversation in just a moment. Let's talk for a minute about kicking things up a notch for the big game, the grand stage, the Super Bowl. Super Bowl 56 is at SoFi, less than 100 days away, and On Location, the official hospitality partner of the NFL, is the only place to score a once-in-a-lifetime Super Bowl ticket and experience package to the big game. Select your exact seats and choose from elite experiences featuring an exclusive pregame celebration with college stars turned NFL legend Troy Aikman, Marcus Allen, Tim Brown, and more. Plus accommodations at 5-star LA hotels and food by the great Wolfgang Puck. Visit onlocation.com/SB56 for more information or search Super Bowl On Location. That's onlocationexp.com/SB56 or search Super Bowl On Location. Also, today's show brought to you by our friends at NetSuite. This is it, the putt to win the tournament. If you sink it, the championship is yours. But on your backswing, your hat falls over your eyes. Is this how you're running your business? Poor visibility because you're still relying on outdated spreadsheets and other finance software. To see the full picture, you need to upgrade to NetSuite by Oracle. NetSuite is the #1 cloud financial system to power through your growth with visibility and control of your finances, inventory, HR planning, and more. NetSuite has you covered. Over 27,000 businesses already use NetSuite right now through the end of the year. NetSuite is offering a one-of-a-kind financing program to those ready to upgrade at netsuite.com/LockedOnNCAA. That is netsuite.com/LockedOnNCAA. And joining us now here on Locked On Auburn, Houston Cougars color analyst Ted Pardee joining us. Ted, thank you so much for your time, man. Excited to talk a little Birmingham Bowl with you today.
Yes, sir, Zach. Hey, look, man. Funny how our paths have crossed here. We had, I'm sure you guys had no idea, and we certainly didn't either. But looking forward to a good game against those Auburn Tigers.
Yeah, the Auburn fan base was kind of feeling, okay, it's either going to be Birmingham Bowl against UCF, which would have been that Brian Harston, Gus Malzahn kind of thing, which would have been interesting. And then I saw a lot of Auburn going to Memphis for the Liberty Bowl against Texas Tech. Those are the two most common things I saw. Was Houston seeing Birmingham Bowl on any of the projections?
You know, I don't think Houston, what we saw, was the bowl up in Boston, was kind of what we thought was going to happen. And it was a matchup against someone like a BC or someone like that, and I think that's a long trip for Houston fans. And although it's a great venue, I don't think it was a great combination of two teams. I think that also because Houston performed pretty well, at least in the first half in the American Conference Championship game, and really went toe-to-toe with a good Cincinnati team. I think that gave us a little bit more respectability, and we actually moved up in the polls, as you probably noticed. So I think that I prefer this matchup. I think let's keep it in the South, and let's see how a Texas team matches up against a heck of an Auburn team.
No, I think it's going to be fun. The more I look at it, the more I'm intrigued by it, and the Auburn fan base, Ted, is split a little bit on this. Some folks are seeing this as, oh man, this is a really tough draw because, Auburn goes 6-6. They felt like they should have done better this season. And then Houston's coming to Birmingham and it's like, dang, this team's playing some really good football. They've had a really good year. And then there's the other side of it where it's like, okay, good. We're playing a good team in the Birmingham Bowl, which is semi-rare, but a good team is coming to Birmingham to play. And so, you got the opportunity to go into the offseason with a big win. So it's a little split here, but Ted, I'm surprised that Auburn's favored in this game right now. Most of the books have Auburn as a 2.5-point favorite. I know you may not be able to comment on some of that due to, being part of the radio broadcast, but that surprised me.
Yeah. I mean, that's how they figure that stuff out in Vegas. I have no idea.
Right.
All I know is that Auburn is a good football team. And I know that everyone gets caught up in the record. To me, the Alabama game says everything. I mean, the Iron Bowl, and I know that there's no second place, or there's no sort of pride in losing a game. But wow, everybody watched that game across the nation. Everybody saw what Coach Harsin has been able to put together. And so with that, I think comes a lot of respect. And I think that, the Auburn fan base has high expectations. And I think that they should, because it's a great program. It's a storied program. So yeah, Houston underdog. I'm really not surprised in my view. Also because of the conferences, Houston's one of the top teams in the American, but there's really only 3 or 4 teams in the American that could even play games in the SEC, right? So you get that balance, and that's where we are today.
Ted, tell us about this Houston team. Impressive record, like you said, one of the top teams in their conference. What are kind of the strengths and weaknesses of this team?
Yeah, Houston is what I appreciate so much about Dana Holgorsen and what they have done with the program over the past 3 years is they've gone back to what Houston's true roots are, in my view, which is offensive explosiveness. So if you look back in the triple option days, Houston invented the veer offense. Coach Yeoman years ago, he and then just invented the wishbone because they had to compete. And fast forward to the 80s, nobody ran 5 wide receiver sets or 4 wide receiver sets, and then Houston runs the run and shoot, and then they have the first African-American Heisman Trophy winner, my former teammate, Andre Ware. So when you think about the arc of Houston football, it's explosive offense. And, for a couple of years there, Houston had a pretty anemic offense, real ball control and just sleepy, not really sexy. Houston has a pretty explosive offense, got some really talented kids. You want to pay attention to the receiver, Tank Dell, small, tiny guy, extremely explosive. If you have a few seconds, I would encourage your listeners and fans to tune into that American Athletic Conference highlight tape, because, man, he made a couple runs that just blew me away after he caught the ball. But there's a lot of talent at the skill positions. Alton McCaskill is a running back, number 22, true freshman. The rumor on the street was that he was being recruited by Alabama, but they couldn't get a hold of him because he doesn't do social media. He's that kind of a kid, and nobody could find him. Yeah, but he's 6'1", 200-pound running back, and he's one of the fastest kids on the team. And then it all's anchored with a great quarterback, a guy named Clayton Tune, who's been beat up the past 2 years, quite honestly, but he's gritty and tough, and he can deliver the fastball. So, again, it comes back to explosive offense, and that's really what Houston's calling card is.
Sure. What about the other side of the football as far as the defense? Just looking at stats, I haven't gotten a chance to really sit down and watch a whole lot of Houston yet, but it seems like defense is kind of the weakness of this team.
Well, what I would say about defense is that Houston's always going to recruit well for defensive players just because of the city of Houston. You don't have to go very far to find talent. But quietly, this defense has really turned into a sack machine. So you've got a few defensive linemen. There's a guy named Derek Parrish. He's number 0. He looks like Hercules out there. He can literally like push the sled or push that tackle back into the quarterback. I've seen him do it a half a dozen times this year. But they have a bunch of other speed guys, guys like D.A. Jones, who got dinged up a little bit in the game, but he's a 6'3", 265-pound defensive end who leads the team in sacks. So, they're a team that can get after you. They're a team that can turn the ball over. They're not going to physically dominate a team at the line of scrimmage, but they're going to be crafty. They've got a fantastic defensive coordinator in Doug Belk. He schemes them up. He uses the talent really well. So, overall, I think that it'll be a heavyweight championship slugfest is kind of the way I see this thing playing out.
We'll continue our conversation with Ted in just a moment. Today's show brought to you by our friends at Made In. How does your favorite restaurant consistently make such delicious food? The short answer is they have access to the right kitchen tools. With Made In's professional quality cookware and kitchenware, anyone is capable of making restaurant quality food at home. I tell you what, I got a frying pan from Made In, and it is top notch. It has become my go-to tool in the kitchen. Everything that I go in there, it gives me a little confidence just because you can tell it's so much nicer than all the pots and pans that I've accumulated over the years. I think it's fantastic. So right now, Made In is offering our listeners 15% off your first order with promo code Locked On. It's the best discount available anywhere online for Made In products. Perfect for this holiday season. madeincookware.com/locked on and use promo code Locked On for 15% off your order. That's madeincookware.com/locked on and then use promo code Locked On. Hey, speaking of food, if you don't want to cook, check out our friends at Fetch Me Home Delivery if you're in the Auburn or Opelika area. And dinner is on them. They will make sure it's picked up for you and taken care of exactly how you like it. They've got a ton of different restaurants partnered with them. I highly encourage you to check out our friends at fetchmedelivery.com or use their free app. Just search Fetch Me in your phone's app store and order away. And when you place that order, use promo code LOCALMEAL to get a little bit knocked off the top there. That is fetchmedelivery.com. Ted, you mentioned that pass rush and, it becoming a sack machine. Could that be a mismatch in favor of Houston? I mean, Auburn's offensive line has been iffy, but we're already hearing parts of the offensive line, their main center. He started 33 games. He's going to miss this bowl game due to having a minor knee operation. And so there's rumors of other guys kind of sitting out. There may be a lot of Auburn guys sitting out with this one. So, could that be a potential mismatch in favor of Houston, you think?
Well, I think you can't. I think you got to be careful, is what I would say. I think that Coach Harson's going to be smart about that. He's going to scheme it so that he takes maximum advantage of whatever line games or whatever blitz packages that Houston brings. Mm-hmm. And, you guys, your second team guys at Auburn are as good as most of the first team guys that Houston plays against. Don't forget about that. So, sure. And I think it's always going to be a balancing act as a coach. He's going to have to say, okay, how much do we need to control these guys through the ball game, running the game, running the ball versus throwing it.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting for sure. The whole dynamic of players sitting out. I mean, I think it's going to hit Auburn hard in a few weeks. How will Houston respond to all of that? What's their situation with potential opt-outs?
Yeah, no, great point. So I'll be curious to see what happens, Zach. I in the past, Houston has had one or two guys that have chosen to not play in the bowl game. Yeah. Guys that were first-round draft choice type guys.
Right.
But this is more of a blue-collar team, to be totally honest with you. They've got Tank Dell's a great player, but he's not ready for the draft yet. So, and Alton McCaskill is a true freshman. So those guys are going to be back next year for Houston. Right. Clayton Tune, I think, is he is old enough. He is kind of that draftable category. So, but I think he'll come back next year. So I really, Houston most likely won't have that happen to their roster. They may have one or two guys that do that, but not enough to really shift the needle, if you will.
Sure. Ted, I'll let some of my listeners know that you're going to come on the show, and we have a few listener questions. If you don't mind answering a few of those, I really appreciate it. So, Thick Marshall Hype Generator asks, what should we fear most about Houston, and what is Houston most scared of in Auburn? And I think you kind of touched on the first part of that, possibly the pass rush. But yeah, what is Houston most concerned about with facing the Tigers, you think?
It's 100% pass rush. It's that defense, that Auburn defense that is, it gets after the quarterback. And, you'll put on the tape and you'll notice Houston's offensive line has been, it's been steady this year. Last year, they had like literally 6 different starting offensive lines. This year, at least it was the same group, but it's been a bit of a patchwork. And if there's anything that the American Conference teams struggle with, it's recruiting offensive linemen. It's the hardest thing for any team in the American to recruit. So yeah, if you watch that conference championship game, you'll see in the second half they got Cincinnati got after Houston really big time, and so Yeah, that D-line, O-line matchup is going to be critical. So what Houston's going to do is they'll bring in 2 tight ends. They'll go with 12 personnel, and then they'll do a little slide protection to try to protect Clayton Tune's backside. But then when you're doing that, Zach, you're pulling those safeties in because they're going to ball hawk and they're going to lock up man to man on those outside guys. And you've only got 2 guys that you could throw to when you keep your tight ends in the block. So without being too technical, it's going to be Houston's got their hands full.
Yeah, sure. I can't wait to watch the game. Another question, C&D01 asks, how does the Houston fan base view this game? Do they feel disrespected as a ranked team playing a 6-6 Auburn team in the Birmingham Bowl? Or are they looking forward to taking on an SEC team that took Bama to 4 overtimes?
That's an absolutely fair question. I mean, I think that some Houston fans some of the cynical ones may be disappointed. But
Sure.
To me, and I know that I think if you ask Coach Holgorsen, this is a big time program that Houston's getting ready to play against. They get to play against Auburn. It is a storied program that is respected across the United States. And look, you the SEC is a tough conference. Let's be totally honest. And it's getting harder. It's not getting easier. It's getting a lot harder now with new teams coming in. And I know that everybody they are a big magnet for talent. But at some point, I don't know how the whole alignment thing's going to end up playing out. But at some point, there's great teams that don't ever have a chance because there's such dominance at the top of the SEC. And when are those teams that are in the middle level going to say, you know what? I'm tired of this. I could go into the Big 12 and be the number 1 team. I know Oklahoma's leaving the Big 12 to go to the SEC. I don't think that's a good move for those guys. In fact, I think Texas is going to be the doormat. Trust me, it's I played against those guys back in the old Southwest Conference. So to me, a long answer, Zach. Sorry, but the answer is look at that Alabama game. Look at the Iron Bowl game. You know what? That's the team that Houston wants to play against, and Houston will get instant credibility if they can hang in there and fight and play a good game against the Auburn Tigers.
What do you think about the destination, Birmingham? Is that an appealing place to folks that live in Texas or other parts of the country? Because living about 2 hours south of Birmingham, I go to Birmingham a lot because some of my good buddies live up there. But yeah, that's not an exciting place to go. But maybe it's because I'm just so close to it. Are y'all excited about traveling to Birmingham?
Great doctors, great hospitals up in Birmingham. Fantastic. Maybe not a destination spot. I think that is Houston's been to this bowl before, by the way. We played Vanderbilt a few years ago in this bowl. Okay. And so luckily it's in a new stadium, which I think is really exciting. So I personally am excited to see the new stadium, but hey, look, everything's a trade-off, and Houston's had some good bowls in the past. They've been in Vegas before. We were in Hawaii a couple of years ago. So, we had the Vacation Bowl, but this one is not about vacation. This one is about building the program is the way that I would look at it. This is an important game for Houston to take seriously because it's going to help. It's the last game when the voters start thinking about next year and where do we slot these American Conference teams in the top 25. Houston wants to land a good spot and then make a run next year to be like Cincinnati. Cincinnati, that's the playbook for all these American athletic teams. What they did this year is exactly what you got to do. You got to knock off someone like Notre Dame or knock off a big time team in order to get that respectability. And my hats off to Cincy. They did it right, and they're in the playoff for the first time.
Yeah, you mentioned that championship game between Houston and Cincinnati. Is it cool, even though Houston was on the losing side of that, is it cool to see Cincinnati go be the first group of 5 playoff team? Or is Houston kind of looking at that saying like, oh man, that could have been us possibly next year or something like that? What's that dynamic like?
No, it's a little bittersweet. Houston rattled off 11 wins in a row, and I don't care what league you're in, 11 wins in a row is really hard. Yeah. Injuries, COVID, I mean, everything that has been going on the past year. So to rattle off 11 in a row is, to me, a sign that the coaching staff has they've got the team together and everybody's pulling the rope the same way because everybody's beat up at the end of the year. So with that, I think that, you just have to kind of you just have to accept that a team like Cincinnati, even though you want to beat them and you want to be the spoiler, which is what we were talking about the week before the championship game. We wanted to be the spoiler, no question about it. And would we do it? Absolutely. However, if you have to lose, I want to lose to those guys. I respect Coach Luke Fickell. I think they've done a great job there, and they burst through the glass now. So now they've done it, and Houston's been to a couple of New Year's Six games. So Houston had a great win a few years ago against Florida State over in the Peach Bowl, and so that was a huge moment. Houston has had other opportunities where they had a shot at the Sugar Bowl and lost in a conference championship game. Right. So we've kind of been through this before over there in Houston, and just much respect to Cincy.
The broadcast geek inside of me has to ask this last question, Ted. But how are you prepping for this broadcast and I guess a new stadium? How does all that kind of play into getting ready for this broadcast?
Yeah, it's in doing this. I mean, you this is your profession, so you got to know what you're talking about, so I have a lot of homework to do about the Auburn Tigers. I obviously I'm a football fan, I'm a football fanatic, and I watch a lot of football on the weekends. So I've seen Auburn play a few times, but and I follow Bo Nix. Bo Nix, to me, his dad, I remember his dad playing. So I get a lot of and my dad played. So I'm a son of a former football player. And so I love that. I love those stories. Those are the things that I think the fans want to hear about. They want to understand, okay, so we all get who the Auburn Tigers are, but who are let's unpack who the players are. And then, what another thing that we do over in Texas is we find all the Texas guys on the roster and we figure out what their stories are. Because inevitably there's kids from Houston, there's kids from Dallas, and we can say, hey, remember this kid when he was in high school? High school football is huge in Texas. So remember, you probably saw him on a highlight on a Friday night. Hey, now he's in Auburn doing great things. So that's kind of how I'll try to prep, Zach. We'll see.
So a few of the jokes that always find their ways into broadcasts is, you got to say Bo Nix's dad played at Auburn. That gets in every broadcast 10 times. TJ Finley will start. He'll be the starting quarterback in the Birmingham Bowl, but you got to say TJ Finley is tall, which he is. He's 6'7", so you got to figure out a way to get that in there a few times. Talk about how tall he is. Kobe Hudson, Auburn's #1 receiver. He's a high school quarterback, but we call him a natural wide receiver. So when he gets a catch, you talk about how natural he is. And then, I guess you'll probably get bonus points for this just because our former quarterback, Jarrett Stidham, every broadcast that we would watch, they had to say that Jarrett Stidham was from Texas 10 times.
Exactly.
So, there you go.
I remember Jarrett real well, obviously being from Baylor and then, some of the overlap with Baylor and Houston. But no, that's exactly it, man. That's how we do it, right? Just kind of get a couple sound bites.
There you go. Ted, thank you so much for your time as always, man. Have safe travels to Birmingham and hope you enjoy your time here in the state of Alabama.
I appreciate it, man. Appreciate it. See you, Zach.
Good stuff from Ted. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I think it's fun. And, he kind of made the joke at the start of it. It's like, oh, yeah, it's funny how your paths cross and things like this because never thought I'd be talking to a Houston person about, this matchup. So I think that's pretty cool. And honestly, a little surprised how pumped they are about it. I thought they'd be bummed to travel, 10 plus hours to Birmingham of all places. They had a really good season. They're playing a 6-6 team, but he seems to really respect what Auburn's got going on. And so it's nice to hear positive things in regards to what other teams think about Auburn because we only hear we're in this SEC echo chamber. So I thought that was pretty cool. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I certainly did. So thank you so much, Ted, for hanging out with us. Hey, tomorrow is a Third Friday. Be sure to come back. So if you're on YouTube, click that subscribe button, like this video, would mean a ton. And of course, whatever podcast app you're listening on, subscribe or follow would mean a ton. We'll see you tomorrow right here on Locked On Auburn.